Hey everyone. Thought I would do my January wrap up with you guys. Since, of course, a month is now over and got quite a bit of reading done here last month. So I wanted to go through this here with you guys of what I read in the month of January. So let's get this started. First of all, I finally finished The Wheel of Time. So I did actually get through the last three books. Now, this was a very long journey. I started reading this series back in September on my flight home from California. Um, Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to read this so bad was because I really wanted to get into understanding the fantasy genre a little bit more. I also really wanted a good introduction to Brandon Sanderson. I know it's weird to say that considering that these are Robert Jordan books. And of course, we all know that Brandon Sanderson took over the last four books in the series. Um, Now, with that, a lot of his, like I've heard interviews, I've heard him talk about it. A lot of the stories that he has to tell, from what I understand, are inspired from this. And a lot of fantasy is inspired from this series. Now, it was a phenomenal series. However, I'm going to go over why I would not recommend it. Um, the thing is, as great as the series was, I did actually enjoy the Brandon Sanderson aspect, or the versions that are the stories that he wrote a little bit more. Robert Jordan was fantastic at world building. He was fantastic at the character development. The problem is the length. I honestly think that this whole series, could have been cut down a bit. It's there was a lot of descriptions with Robert Jordan, and at times it almost felt like I was being taken out of that world because it was mid conversation and he'd go into details of the surroundings and what's going through the characters' heads. I don't mind hearing the thought patterns, I don't mind hearing the descriptions, but he really went into depth. And again, I don't have a problem with this overall, but it seemed like a lot of these conversations that these characters had, he had a lot of in-depth descriptions. It's not a bad thing. Great world building, fantastic, but this is not a series that I'm going to go and recommend. And I loved every single one of these books. I really did. Obviously, I'm not going to prevent anyone from going into this series and enjoying it. It is a staple within the fantasy world. I mean, any really experienced reader, there's somebody that's really gotten into fantasy, maybe it's a little bit more for them. Uh, but this is not one that I would actively recommend. Still, I still loved it though. It was fantastic. A really, really well written story. So overall, I still give it a really high rating. Like it's definitely a 5 out of 5 series. It's just very lengthy, and there's a lot behind it to really consider. So after I was done reading The Wheel of Time, I really wanted a bit of a palate cleanser. I kind of veered away from fantasy a little bit. Now, one of the genres I've really gotten into, the one that really got me into reading, was thriller, and I did dabble into some sci-fi as well. So this was the one out of two sci-fi novels that I read, which was Upgrade. This book I read, I consumed this book. I think I was done in a day and a half. Honestly, it was a fantastic read. It follows this guy named Logan who is working for a specialized police department where they're investigating alternate altering human DNA. And he finds himself in a situation where he's trying to prevent this incident from happening. It does also ask the question of at what length do we stop becoming human? and it was a fantastic read. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I picked up his other book, Recursion, as well, which is on my list to read as well at some point in time this year. Um, both of the books I've read so far from him, so Upgrade and Dark Matter, have been really, really well done. And I felt really smart reading this book. And I was on the edge of my seat the whole time while I was reading it. So anyone that has read um, Dark Matter, I would recommend picking this one up as well. It doesn't have the same feel. It's not as well written, but it's still up there, and I would still say it's a really good read. And it's not that long either. I think it was only 350 pages ish, somewhere in there. But I got through it within a day and a half. It was phenomenal. The characters were well fleshed out, and the issues that were brought up were really thought provoking. So speaking of feeling smart when you're reading, this one really really made me feel really intelligent as well. It was fleshed out well enough that I could get it. So the next one is The Secret of Secrets. I did pre-order this one here last year, so as I said, I did kind of veer away from fantasy, as you could clearly tell. This one was really interesting. I don't really, I understand the concept. I don't really believe it. And I'm not going to get too philosophical with this one as well. But the premise of this particular book is that the human consciousness is not stored in the brain. The thought is that the brain is too small, and that your consciousness and your memories are sparked by your surroundings. So when you see something around you, your brain connects to another dimension, basically, to download the information of what should be stored in your brain. I feel that it's a little out there for that aspect of things, but it was a really interesting read. Of course, this follows Robert Langdon. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up making a movie based off of this. The last Robert Langdon book I read, I felt that they kind of almost dumped him down a little bit. I like when he's talking about the different symbols and what they mean and the connections historically that are connected to it. I felt this book and the last book, he didn't do that as often, but he definitely found himself in difficult situations that he's needed to review and get through. Still using his brain to put everything together. I felt that the last quarter of the book, he kind of started doing that, and was the Robert Langdon that I remembered from the first few books. But again, this series overall, like, this is one that you don't necessarily need to pick up, Angels and Demons. You don't need to pick up the Da Vinci Code. You don't need to pick up Inferno. Those ones you don't necessarily need to read to understand this. I would recommend it, but because I do think overall the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons are still the best work in this series. But this is still really well done, really well written. I'm glad I picked this one up, and this is likely one that I will eventually get back into as well, and reread. But it may be a little while, but I'm happy that I have this one. This was a fantastic book. I do recommend this one as well, to any thriller readers out there. So again, this last one was The Secret of Secrets. So Dan Brown's a fantastic writer. I mean, all of his books I would recommend. After I was done The Secret of Secrets, I kind of felt like between Upgrade and Secret of Secrets, I kind of needed something that kind of shut my brain off a little bit more. So as you can see behind me, or on this side, I guess, as you see behind me here, I've got Darth Vader and a Lego Millennium Falcon, a small one, obviously. And so I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan. I was lucky enough to go to Star Wars Land this year. Um, I'm I've followed the movies throughout my whole life, basically. It, I mean, we all have that connection to Star Wars, most of us at least, anyways. Of course, there is still a novel universe. So the one book that I picked up last year that I didn't have a chance to read was Master of Evil. Um, this particular book was exactly what I was looking for. Helped me shut my brain off. Sorry. This book helped me shut my brain off. Had technical difficulties there. Sorry about that. Um, so that being said, this particular book I would actually only rate a 3 out of 5. Um, I was kind of hoping that the book itself would take place from Vader's perspective throughout the course of the book. And I think there were only 2 chapters that followed from Vader's perspective, and they were very, very short chapters. Otherwise, it followed another character that was trying to help and work with Vader for the most part, and it tells the early days of when he was in the suit. They even have a clip of what happened when he rebuilt his lightsaber, all of that part of the story. It was nice to see the direction that this particular book went for that part. um Unless you're a really avid Star Wars fan, I would not say rush out and pick this one up. It definitely is nice to see a little bit more of what happened with Vader after the events of episode 3. So it was decent. It was exactly what I needed. But overall, it doesn't rate very high on the books that I've read scale. Probably, honestly, within the next month or two, I'll likely forget what it was even about. So this one will probably eventually be in an unhauling. But at this point, I mean, it's on my shelf, and who knows if I'll go back to it and reread it. But yeah, Master of Evil, it was okay. Now, I've talked about this next series, and I'm only going to go over this explanation of the series this time, and then I'll tackle each individual book that I get to eventually. So these are the books that got me back into reading. So a little side story here. Now I got into this television series on Amazon, and what happened for me, and I'll kind of go over this. I guess I have time to tell this story. I got into this television series on Prime, really enjoyed it, found out it was based off of a book series. So I picked up the first book. And I think it took me about a month to read. And this is when I wasn't getting into reading like I was now. So I got through this book, and I loved it. I loved the television series. And once I got into the series, I started reading it a little bit more. Obviously getting through these books a lot quicker. Normally 2-3 days, I'm done. That, of course, is Lee Child's Reacher series. So I read A Wanted Man. So one thing about this series is that, as you can also see behind me, I've got a bunch of his books on my shelves here as well. And quite a few that I haven't read yet. I do have some that are on digital and e-reader. And I've read the majority of this series so far. So this particular book, Reacher is looking to hitchhike, and he gets picked up by somebody, but it turns out that he ends up in the middle of a conspiracy. I'm not going to say much more than that. This is not Lee Child's best work. I still, I there's, I think Persuader is still one of my favorites. Echo Burning is still one of my favorites. Overall, I think this one is still a 3.5 out of 5. I still enjoy these series. It's not, it's exactly what you expect a Reacher book to be. And the best thing is about these ones is you don't have to read the other books that are associated with this series. You can just pick them up and read it. I'm personally reading them in order when, like, I kind of want a bit of a palate cleanser. I'm looking for, I just need a break from whatever series. I always return to Reacher. And the now that I've started reading these books and I've gotten into the television series with Alan Richardson, I gotta say I have such a hard time with even the thought of rewatching the Tom Cruise movies, considering he doesn't fit the stature or he doesn't quite have the personality as Reacher in these movies. So overall, I love this series though. If you're looking for something a little bit different, the first book in the series is based off of the first season of the show Reacher, which is A Killing Floor. It's a fantastic place to start. You get a little bit of an understanding of the character. There are some prequels out there as well about his time in the military, and I do recommend it, especially for any avid thriller reader. But this is the series that really got me into reading. Just a side note: after I read this one, I decided to try to get back into a particular series, and I started reading Aragon, and I did enjoy it. I did get through it, but once I was done that book, I realized I wanted something a little bit more gritty. I wanted something a little bit more dark. I realized that I've kind of felt like I grew out of the young adult stories that are out there, and I know that there's some really good ones out there. I have no issue with Aragon. I loved it, but it just, I'm getting to the point now where it's like I can't pick up these young adult books anymore. I've kind of found myself interested in more grim dark and that type of thing. So the funny part is, after I read that, I wanted to read a book that was about dragon riders. So I picked up Fourth Wing, and I did I did not know what I was in for. The first 3/4 of the book, I was like, okay, this is kind of like Hunger Games in an aspect. Like, I've never read Hunger Games, but I understood the premise. And I got through 3/4 of the book, and I told my sister, I was like, yeah, you got to read this series. You got to read this book. And she took my advice. She picked it up, and she demolished the series. She even booked her book time off for book 3, Onyx Storm. And she said, you got to get back into the series. You got to get back into the series. But anyways, I got to the last quarter of the book, and it's one of these books. Okay. But at this point, I was kind of invested in the story. So I figured I would finish it off. I tried to read book 2, and I gotta say, I can't do that series anymore. It's just, the character I find to be really whiny and can't make up her mind with what she wants. And it just, the writing style is fine, but I can't get over how annoying this character really is. But anyways, it worked well for my sister. She got into that series, and she's really gotten into the romanticy aspect and books that are out there. So if anybody wants to check her stuff out, she is on TikTok. She does have a TikTok channel. I believe it's Marissa Romance Realms, I believe is what it is. I'll have to double check. She's doing really well. I'm really proud of her. So go check her stuff out. But especially if you're into the romanticy aspect of things, or romance in general, you won't find that here. In fact, I will touch base on a little bit of what I am reading. I've heard this all over BookTube, everywhere that I've gone, and I've gotten back into the fantasy worlds. So I'm finally starting to read The Will of the Many, and I got to tell you, I am absolutely loving this book. Right after I'm done reading The Will of the Many, I do have The Strength of the Few sitting on my bookshelf, and I am going to be getting into that right away. I'm not sure what I'm going to be reading at this point, but they are definitely going to be on my reading. I'm going to read them in February for sure. So I touched a little bit on base about the books I've read. I wanted to also talk really quickly, really briefly about a book series that is gotten approval to be on Apple. So for those that I've got my dog Cirilla walking in. Hello. So anyways, the book series, it's not just one series, I should say, it's a whole world. Brandon Sanderson has gotten approval with Apple to be filming and getting involved with, and he's got creative control of Cosmere. It's coming to Apple. So for those that are not familiar, the ones that are going to be going on to Apple are Mistborn and the Stormlight Archives. So you can kind of, I've got both of these books here. I actually have way more on my shelf. I have the first series of Mistborn, and I have the second series of Mistborn, and I have the Stormlight Archives ready to go. I'm very, very, very excited to see this. I have full intentions of getting to these books before they get released on Apple. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, though. These books are extremely intimidating. Right now, I know I think I kind of see my shelf bowing a little bit from their weight. But I mean, you're looking at 12 to 1300 pages per book, and there are 5 books in the Stormlight Archives. He's announced that he's doing another set of Stormlight Archive books as well, which will be another 5 that he's adding into the Cosmere. How he does it is beyond me. And this was the whole reason why I wanted to read The Wheel of Time, is to understand his writing style and his inspiration for the books that he wanted to read. But I'm interested and excited to see this coming to the screen. From what I understand, what I've been hearing is Mistborn is being turned into movies, and the Stormlight Archives are being turned into an actual series. So and of course, with him having creative control and doing the writing for this series, I think this is fantastic news. And this is the other good news is as well that this is not Netflix. This is not Prime that have made big changes to the existing worlds that are out there. Wheel of Time I was kind of enjoying actually I was enjoying it quite a bit before I read the books, and that was the premise on why I wanted to watch the show before reading the books, because I find that if I watch the movies or I watch the TV series, I enjoy the TV series and the movie at least once before I watch it and go, oh, this is bad. This is really bad. So now that Brandon Sanderson has control, I don't have to worry about that aspect of things. I know that he will keep things very close to the books and to the series. So I'm going to check it out. I'm going to read these books. They are on my list this year. I'm going to likely be tackling them later on this year. I'm not going to be rushing to them or through them. Now, when I do decide to start reading them, I think I'm going to stick to the Mistborn series, read something else in between, read the second Mistborn series, read something else in between, then read the Stormlight Archives. And that's the part that I'm really intimidated by. But I am going to get through these books this year. That's the goal. The other goal is to read 50 books, and as of right now, I've read 7. So that's where I'm at. That's my update, and I'm hoping that you guys kind of help me keep on track with that. But anyways, so that's what I've got for you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe, and I will be back soon with some more content. Bye, guys.